Hello and welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore the journey of the asteroid Eros through the sign of Capricorn, which begins on the 1st of February 2023 and concludes on the 24th of March when it moves into the sign of Aquarius. Now, as ever, I want to give you an outline of how I'm going to structure the video. You may have known that I did a special on Juno relatively recently, and a lot of people were saying, could I do some more on asteroids? So hence exploring Eros. But what does Eros in astrology represent? What does the icon of this particular asteroid represent? What's the mythology that informs the impact in astrology? And also, what is the impact of Eros in Capricorn itself? An earthy sign which has a rather somber ruler in Saturn, but how does that play out with Eros? What's the cycle of Eros? How long does it take to make its passage around the sun? Also, I'd like to share with you where my position of Eros is, and also my wife's, because they're very, very close, and they're both in the sign of Capricorn. Now you may be thinking, Patrick, Capricorn's a rather reserved sign. Why are you wearing that rather bold shirt? Well, it's because Elisa persuaded me to wear this along the lines that Eros is very much about passion and desire. And also, what can we take from Valentine's Day? What planetary influences will be demonstrating their influence on that particular day? Whether we're in a relationship, would like to be in a relationship, happily involved in a loved up time with our cat or our dog, I'll explore that. And also, what does the Ingres event chart tell us of the moment that Eros moves into Capricorn? How is that informing the overall influences from the other planets? And obviously Venus and Mars are very important to that, and the descendant, which is how we connect with people in natal astrology. So that's the structure. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for joining me once more. If you're new to my channel, it's great to have you with me. Please feel you can comment. I interact with everybody. It's very much a community, and it would be great if you would like and subscribe. Also, if you would like to ascend above zodiac astrology and really explore at a much deeper level your own potential, if you give me 3 pieces of your personal information of time, date and place of birth, I can give you a 12-month forecast, and in my special package of 30% off, a life roadmap report. This can help you to understand some of the repeating patterns in your life. Some good, some more challenging. The challenging ones you can get a more intimate understanding about. And also in this special package you can get a free Zodiac, Vedic and Chinese 12-month PDF booklet that I've put together. And that is free. Please see the link beneath this video. Also free, you can sign up for your daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below. Or if you prefer to have a one-to-one with me, I do a lot of these, but I don't or haven't up until now really said too much about it. But you can read my testimonials underneath this video too. So Eros moves into the earthy Capricorn on the 1st of February through to the 24th of March before moving into the sign of Aquarius. Now Eros is the god of love in the Greek mythological tradition and is shown as a young man, naked body with an arrow. But we can also see a correlation with Cupid in Roman mythology. Now, very often in Western astrology, Roman mythology has superseded the Greek, but not in this particular case. Now, Eros carried a golden arrow, and the idea was to pierce the victim until they fell in love with whoever was closest. So there is a a view that the arrow could be seen in a kind of phallic sense. But I must stress, particularly with the world that we're moving into, that Eros himself did not discriminate in love between male or female. So Eros himself rules, therefore, over same-sex love. But there is that arrow there, and it was said that the golden arrow was the positive side of capturing that love, but the lead arrow was very much to create discord. So a complex mythology there. But obviously with the arrow, it can pierce and it can penetrate. So when we do fall for someone, obviously it can really be very powerful. But Eros isn't just about passion, even if we feel that or see that the modern word eroticism comes from Eros. It's what we're passionate about beyond sex, but it is very much to do with sex for sure. Now, the arrival of Eros in Capricorn is really interesting because obviously this is an earth sign, but Mars, the planet of passion, is exalted in the sign of Capricorn. So there is a receptiveness, I feel, and the libido of people with Mars in Capricorn can actually be very high. The issue here is that the Saturnian rulership of Capricorn wants to feel in control, not necessarily of the other person, just in control of one's self. But there is a desire side to people with Eros in Capricorn of wanting to achieve something tangible, because that's a very laudable earth host response. And it's very much to do with cracking on and being very thorough, well organised and workmanlike. So, you know, this could be somebody who can be quite successful in their work, who may have Eros in Capricorn. So for us all over these next 8 weeks, and particularly if you are single and you would like to meet somebody, it wouldn't be a surprise if there was part of you that was attracted to someone who manifested a sense of success or worldliness or authority, or equally that could be a massive turn off. Now in terms of the cycle, Eros takes about 1.7 years to go round the sun. So if we divide that by the 12 signs, it's around about 55 days per sign. But this particular transit is going to be 52 days in the sign of Capricorn. Now a little bit of fessing up. Obviously there's an age gap relationship between myself and my wife, but my Eros is at 7 degrees 10 minutes in Capricorn, and Elisa's is at 9 degrees 37 in Capricorn. But hers is conjunct Neptune in the 6th house, and Elisa is very, very imaginative. So her passion is to provide services which are supportive but imaginative, and she is very compassionate. But also my Eros is conjunct Mercury, so my passion is communication. So hence I do these videos, write newspaper columns, work with clients. It's all about communication. But when we think about the combination of Eros in Capricorn, we may think that status would be very important, but I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it's more to do with relating to someone based on their ability to be very serious, stable, disciplined about their application to the love relationship. So it would be someone who may have some old-fashioned virtues, likes to turn up on time, likes to be reliable. So if you do have Eros in Capricorn in your nativity, you're probably attracted to those qualities too. But you could be someone, you know, who is very hard working for sure. And I think that is true of Elisa and I. Now, what's going to be happening on Valentine's Day? Well, the Sun is going to be conjunct Saturn that day in Aquarius, which obviously is quite a testing influence. It may mean, therefore, that if a relationship doesn't have a lot of commonality in terms of friendship, which Aquarius represents, that could make a night out seem a little bit remote. it may feel as if you don't actually spend that much time together, and it's like, well, what is this about? But there are other influences that are quite magical. So on that day, Venus is combining with Neptune in Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces, Neptune is the co-regent. So that's a beautiful mystical influence, which could mean if you're dating someone going out for that Valentine's meal for the very first time, it could be really captivating. But also, Eros at 8 degrees in Capricorn at that time, so just in between Elisa and I's position, so hopefully we'll have a good Valentine's night. Well, it forges a terrific link with the North Node. So the North Node is like our instinct of the direction of travel, and I feel that that's a very positive alliance between Eros. The passion, the desire of Eros is linking well with the North Node, but in the very sensual sign of Taurus. But also Venus is in a midpoint with Mars in Taurus as well. So that's rather nice too. So I think there is the potential to enjoy good food, good wine, talk about maybe the things that you don't talk about so much, the practical issues, Sun conjunct Saturn, maybe childcare, who does or contributes what in the domestic environment. But there is the potential for some very steamy action later on that could be very sensual indeed, because earth signs love sensuality. So whether it's preceded by a lovely hot bath with some Epsom salts and candles and a glass of wine and some massage, and then getting up close and personal, or it's more to do with going out and having a lovely meal and really pampering each other. All of those sensual pleasures are going to be wonderful preempts to intimacy and closeness. But obviously, if you're not in a relationship, I think what Eros in Capricorn is going to do is give you an opportunity to think in a very structured way, Saturn, about what you want and set some realistic ideas on the type of person who would be good for you. And also, if you're, as I mentioned before, happily single, you may just feel, oh, the whole Valentine's thing is just so sickeningly commercial. No one talks about people who are on their own, which is very excluding, and I totally agree. And that's why I'm mentioning you now. But it doesn't mean to say you don't have a relationship with yourself, does it? Because the most important relationship any of us has is with ourselves. So why not cook yourself a lovely dinner? Why not have a beautiful glass of wine, that luxurious bath, listen to some beautiful music, pamper yourself? And if you're tucked up in bed with your best friend, being your cat, like I used to have with Ted, my black cat, who was my close companion for many years, or with your teddy bears, it doesn't matter, because you're tuning in to that sensual magic. But of course, one of the things we can feel if we're on our own, and we don't want to be on our own, is a sense of loss or sadness. What I would always say to someone in this situation, if you're not currently involved with someone, at least you're free to be involved with someone, and you're not in a painful relationship, you're free. So that has some benefits, so do acknowledge those benefits. And also it gives you the chance to change that. And I think, again, Eros being in Capricorn can help you to set the structure, to think about what it is you want. But if you are in a relationship that's struggling, one of the things that Venus's combination with Neptune can do is see you looking at everyone else and saying, well, look at the magic they're exchanging and look at the reality of my situation. And you can tune into that Saturn conjunction with the Sun in a big way and think, I just don't see this tie going into the future. I do not see it lasting long term. And that would be a perfectly reasonable position to take, as long as you're not kidded that everybody else is having this perfect magical alliance, because that's the great thing about Capricorn, it keeps it real. So that is very important to consider for Valentine's. But in terms of the Ingres event chart, I just wanted to pick out a couple of aspects really to keep it fairly simple. So on the screen now you can see it in Placida, so I'll just grab my wheel. And we do have a very fine link between the Sun and Mars, which is quite energized, and the Sun is in the first house based on Universal Central Time, so Greenwich. And so the first house is very much about action. Saturn is fairly close to the Sun as this event occurs. Obviously, by the time we get to Valentine's Day, the Sun's caught up with Saturn. But as this event, the ingress begins of Eros into Capricorn, you can see the Sun is a free spirit in Aquarius. It's also in the second decan, governed by the Quicksilver Mercury. So if you want to get on the front foot and be bold, the link with Mars is the one I want you to look out for. So there's Mars down in Gemini. It is in the 4th house in Placidus. I did do this in equal house and thought, should I show it in equal house? But I feel that it's much harder to explain Placidus, but for me it gives a greater sense of accuracy. So what we can see is that Mars in the 4th house is asking us to be bold but mindful of how we feel. These are air signs, so they're about action. And of course, on Monday, the 30th of January, they were in an exact trine. And we also had Mercury and Uranus in an exact trine. So we've moved forwards a couple of days, and so Mars is saying, yes, you can communicate well, but be mindful of what your emotional component is of your communication. So in other words, what's your motive? Now also we've got a position of Jupiter, which is feeding into Mars and the Sun very well too. But guess what? It's in the 2nd house. And it's also very close to Juno. And Juno, of course, as I explored in my last video, is very much the asteroid of commitment, marriage, moving in, sharing resources. But they're in the 2nd house, which is very Tauran. Also the midpoint between Venus and Mars itself, they're also together in the 2nd house, along with the midpoint of the Sun and the Moon. So I feel that the potential to embrace the earth dimension of all our lives, even if money's a bit tight at the moment for a lot of people, we can still find ways to be creative in order to connect with people, to buy a small thoughtful gift or send a really thoughtful text, cook someone a meal. These are things that we can use a lot of our craft in order to create some magic. So the alchemy that Eros into Capricorn gives us is boosted by the Sun, by Mars, the planet of passion, by Jupiter, the planet of fortune. And Venus is in a beautiful location in the sign of Pisces, where it really loves to be, but it is in a square with Mars. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. But in terms of solar astrology, obviously Venus in house 12 is squaring with Mars in house 3. So I would just be cautious if there is someone you're really drawn to, you really fancy, but you're not quite sure at gut level whether you really would connect at a more spiritual level. Do proceed with a little bit of caution. But you can see the Moon, which is obviously the core of all our need to relate, is in the 5th house. Beautiful for romance. It's also forging a fantastic link with Saturn. So if you're lucky enough to meet someone at this time who you really click with, I feel it can be hot, it can be very sensuous, it can be very sensual, it can be very playful, and it can be very communicative. But I feel that the steadiness of Eros in Capricorn, but also the desire for that intense, meaningful, stable passion is also going to show itself strongly too. Now please stay with me as I give you a brief flavour of what you can expect for each of the 12 zodiac signs through the next 8 weeks. So Aries, for you, it could be that you could find yourself attracted to someone who is quite influential, successful, someone who has got a good job or their own car, or maybe you have those things and that's what you want to match that up. But it's important that we're not kidded by materialism. After all, you can live in a chateau with a range of supercars outside. If you've got no one to share those things with, that can be quite an empty experience. But I think in a more pragmatic way, there could be an opportunity to develop a connection with someone in your professional life. And don't be surprised if someone younger or older than you captures your imagination. Now, Taurus, if you have a love of travel, particularly to those places that, really pull at the heartstrings, the beautiful buildings and setting, now you've got a wonderful opportunity over the next 8 weeks to jet off and make that connection. Even if you go off with some friends, it can lift your spirits hugely. And enjoying that, lovely local cuisine, you have an innate appreciation of those things anyway. That for sure can be boosted. And remember, Venus and the North Node, Venus your ruler, in your sector of the 11th house, in such a great link with the North Node in your sign. Is there somebody in your sphere who you already know? It could be a friend. It could be someone that you're drawn to. Maybe the attraction to this person is something that you've kept quite close to your chest up until now. Maybe it's not something that you've really revealed. We do have the Sun in Aquarius in a direct right angle with Uranus on this event. So I think it's possible that if you do make a move in a romantic sense, it could feel a bit disruptive. Maybe one of you lives in a different location and there is this sense that, there's work or there's children if you're older, or set commitments that could get in the way or inhibit the spark of attraction and spending time with one another. But where there's a will, Taurus, there's certainly a way. And I just feel that the position of Eros in the 9th house for you is pushing you, as you've had a lot in recent years, to step outside your comfort zone. Now, obviously, security and stability are very important to your sign too, but you're no slouch when it comes to sensuality, and that side of your nature is definitely going to be turned up to a very high frequency over the next 8 weeks. Gemini. Now, Eros moving into Capricorn has a particularly lovely dimension to it, because this is the 8th house for you. And the 8th house is where we dive deep, but it's also where we get very close. And of course, with the 8th house, we can see ends and we can see beginnings. So if a relationship hasn't been working out for you, the fact that the Sun is in the part of your horoscope to do with exploration but higher truth, and it is clashing with Uranus in your 12th house, maybe something that you're not happy with in an existing tie does need to be ventilated once and for all. So it can give you the opportunity to go through some kind of transformation. If you're lucky enough to not be in a relationship that's weighing you down, I feel that your desire to get up close and personal is really going to be increased quite significantly, and it's going to be very difficult to resist that. So if you get an opportunity, the fact that Mars is going forwards in your sign, it's forging a dramatic angle with the Sun. You also have the Moon in your sign, and all of that's telling you to take your courage in your hands and let someone know of your interest. If you brace yourself for a rejection, that's probably a degree of wisdom, but it's also a potential to condition yourself in a negative way. So do try to think really positively about how this can unfold for you. Now, Cancer, Eros going into your 7th house is wonderful, really, because what you're looking for is someone to match you up, and the 7th house matches up your Sun. So for the next 8 weeks, you could have connections with various people, not necessarily romantically. Could be in a business partnership. It could just be that someone you encounter and you find them very heartwarming. That side of you that can be so protective that you keep your desires hidden away under that hard shell, because it's much easier to stay safe than, really emerge and take that risk of trying something on the romantic front. So basically, with Jupiter, Juno and Chiron, all in a very visible part of your situation, asking you to be bold and daring, and the great link between Jupiter and the Sun, that could tempt you to take a step forwards. But my proposition to you is it may not be until the 25th of March that you will really start that process in earnest. And the reason for this, unless something happens very organically, I feel it will be when Mars arrives in your sign that you will feel the impulse to be much more go-getting. And that exciting phase from the 25th of March will last for 6 weeks. But I feel that what this particular transit can do is give you a lot of opportunity to prepare yourself psychologically. Think about what you want. Think about what you're prepared to give. Think about what you don't want. But also think about what other people may want from you. That's the important bit that we all forget at times. It's not just about our side of the bargain. So Leo, Eros being in Capricorn is an interesting one, because I've been saying to you for some while about the need for you to not withdraw your support to other people, but to be more conscious of your own needs to explore and be a free spirit. With Jupiter in the 9th house, that is really being emphasised in a very wholesome way. Now the Sun is forging a fantastic link to Mars, so I think you're really being asked to socialise. But if you do socialise with people you work with, that could hold a little bit of a clue for how this can unfold. Sure, Saturn is just still through to the 7th of March in your sector of relating, but he's been giving you some big lessons over the last 2.25 years. And as he moves into Pisces, if you've really absorbed those lessons, and Pluto moves into Aquarius on the 23rd of March, well, that's going to coincide with the arrival of Eros on your 7th house cusp. So I feel that this, again, a bit like Cancer, can be a preparatory period, but because of the Sun's fantastic bubbly link with Mars, although the Moon is in a square with Neptune, which can create a little bit of confusion about someone you may be drawn to in your friendship circle, I feel that we need to really emphasise where the opportunity is. And the opportunity for you is to try to get out and about and interact more. You can be a very sociable and warm person. It doesn't mean to say that you can't be aware of other people's needs. But I think Eros may point towards connections through work. Now, in terms of Virgo, Eros moving into your 5th solar house is about as good as it gets, because the 5th house is about love. It is potentially about marriage. It doesn't mean to say that those things are instantly going to manifest themselves over the next 8 weeks, but then half a bad thing to have Eros in that location as we start this journey. But you do have your feelings quite close to the surface with the Moon in the 10th, squaring up with Neptune in the 7th. So around an existing relationship, if things do feel bogged down and you're not quite sure, the arrival of Saturn in your 7th house on the 7th of March is going to ask some big questions. But if you're single, the fact that Venus and Eros are in such a magical alliance really does give you a lot of encouragement. Now, Libra, how ironic that Eros arrives in your 4th house just as Pluto's preparing to say goodbye for those brief 11 weeks. But Eros is also in the 4th house an opportunity to think about how you might spoil someone with a meal, or go for a walk in nature, get close to water. 4th house, very Cancerian. And I think it might suit you to take things quite slow, but you do have Jupiter in your sector of relating. Someone asked me today, what will be the significance of Neptune and Saturn moving into Aries in the early part of 2025 together for Librans? And I answered, I think it will really help you to see how far you've come in the journey of balancing what you need for yourself with how you interact with the need for other people, but no longer feel guilted about having to be such a people pleaser. So more confidence around your boundaries will have really been established by then. But for sure, just building up the emotional dimension, just because Pluto's been in the 4th house and can be a wrecker, remember it can be a builder. And it's also helped you to realise who you don't want in your life, big time. So Eros is a little gentle step, building up to when we move. Eros moves into Aquarius on the 24th of March, and Pluto the day before, a chance to really get on the front foot in a more social dimension. Now Scorpio, Eros moving into your 3rd house, where of course you've had Pluto for the last 15 years. So it's the power of your message, but rarely do you not have a powerful message. But if there's someone that you really fancy with Venus in your 5th house, what are you waiting for? A great opportunity. But perhaps Saturn in the 4th house is making you a bit tongue-tied. With the moon and your ruler Mars, traditional ruler Mars, in your 8th house, are you a bit anxious or nervous about revealing how you feel? Possibly. But I feel that what Saturn's done over the last few years is giving you a bit of a crash course about what works for you and needs to feel robust, and what you won't do because it makes you feel exposed and vulnerable. And because you've had that crash course, now Eros comes along to say, what do you want to say and who do you want to say it to? Say what you mean and mean what you say. Which brings us to Sagittarius. Now, obviously for you, Capricorn is very much about a kind of Tauran energy. So Eros moving here is rather nice. You know, even if you're one of those Sagittarius people who's here, there and everywhere, and obviously there's a very energized set of influences going on at the moment, because Mars and the moon are in your 7th house, there's a lot to like. Yes, Neptune is an aggravant because it's squaring the moon, and that means some of the messages you feel you're getting could seem mixed or vague or confusing. But I still feel there's a lot in this situation to go for, and I think, you know, if you're someone who's good at cooking or likes eating out, that's the platform to connect with someone. If you've got a vast knowledge on wine, you'll have great fun outlining all your experiences in that regard. So a very enriching transit is in store for you over the next 8 weeks. Capricorn, Eros into your sign. Well, of course, Capricorn is not the sign of necessarily taking immediate risks, but Mercury, you can see, is in your sign, and it is in a fine link with Uranus in your sector of daring, of romance, the 5th house. Pluto is coming to the end of its journey through your sign, and I've had quite a lot of correspondence from Capricorn people telling me how difficult it's been. Pluto has probably been impacting more than just your sun, but not absolutely definitely so. There's no easy answer to it really. I feel that the 1st house is very much about our identity. So Eros moving into it suggests that if your sense of self is strong, that's going to give you the confidence to reach out to others. But of course the 1st house is about the beginning of things, and you know, in terms of the 7th house, which is how we relate, what can you gain from this event? Well, in terms of the technical chart, that the descendant is in Cancer, so that's real good for you, and it's not too far behind Pluto. So the thrust and confidence that you could show, together with the allure and passion of Eros, is not to be underestimated. Aquarius, Eros in the 12th house. Do you like to keep your love relationships pretty private and quiet? Are you someone who doesn't really like other people talking about your business, even though you have a reputation of being out there, friendly, bubbly, and with Mars informing the Sun and Jupiter informing the Sun and Mars, there's a lot to really like about this chart in terms of you taking the initiative. Mars is in your sector of risk, the 5th house, as is the moon too. But I think having Pluto just and Mercury and Eros all in the 12th house, I feel it's about confidence really, to be honest. And obviously that would be true of all of this, but I feel that Pluto has been very, very tough for some Aquarius people over the last 15 years. If you've come out of that intact and you'd like to take a step forwards with somebody new, great, go for it. If you're in a relationship and you feel that the more psychological or sensitive or emotional dimension of yourself isn't celebrated by your partner, you could be thinking carefully about what you're going to do. I think your decision making will become clearer from the 25th of March. Pluto will move 2 days before, but then Eros plays catch up. But I feel that if you're in a relationship which is pretty good, in pretty good shape, it may be a good time to open up a little bit, because you can be a bit detached. You can be caught up in the things that stimulate your mind and a bit wary about showing your vulnerabilities. But if you're mainly safe with someone, I think it could actually bring you a lot closer together. Now, if you're single, it may be that there's going to be some kind of confidential connection with someone. Might it be with someone from your past? Will you hear from someone during this transit from your past? It wouldn't be a surprise. Or are you going to have a clandestine connection? Well, maybe, but just remember that in the event chart, Saturn's in the first house, so that can be quite challenging quite quickly if it's not the right situation and your motives aren't right and the other persons aren't right, and it could all fall over and get messy very, very quickly. So just be aware of that, particularly with Uranus squaring your Sun, because what you do have at the moment may be a little bit more important than you think it is, and an impulsive move could actually see some sudden change influence your situation, akin to the Tower in the tarot, I feel, with the Sun squaring with Uranus in your emotional zone. So I wouldn't be too hasty if there is somebody new emerging that you really feel drawn to. Just really check things out slowly. Now, Pisces. The most important thing in any relationship, I think, is the ability to celebrate, not that you have everything the same interests. I don't think that's the issue at all. But you can celebrate the fact that you have interests. They may be different, but you can still celebrate those interests. And I think that Eros really is asking you and other fish to really bear that in mind. It's not necessarily having everything totally tied down and pat, but you do have Venus in your own sign. So if you do want to draw someone to you, I think a great way to do it is by giving yourself a glamorous makeover. Saturn in the 12th house may have been sapping your morale a little bit over the last couple of years, seeing you clinging to home, being much more of a recluse. Obviously, we've had COVID, which has made things very difficult, and the whole world seems to have changed forever. So it's not such an interactive environment, but that's not necessarily been a good thing. Saturn arriving in your sign, I guarantee you, will bring you more rewards than Saturn in the 12th house has. It's just that the archetype of Saturn is represented in a very fearful way by a lot of people. And we do need to respect Saturn very carefully. It's rather like the sea. The sea brings us great joy when we swim in it. Beautiful boat trips on a lovely mill pond sea. Nothing like it. But of course, when it's stormy, it can be a completely different experience. It's probably not a great analogy, but Saturn, if handled right, can work for us. So if you're born early in the sign of Pisces, as soon as Saturn pitches up, it's asking you to get more disciplined. But it could be asking you to get more disciplined about your love life. It's not just about the things that you can lose, or feeling more limited, or feeling less energized. Those things are possible. But if you can find a way to use Eros through the next 8 weeks by joining something, a pursuit, a hobby club, an interest area which really appeals to you, that can be a super way to connect to somebody new. I think those concerns about, well, not necessarily concerns, those thought processes about where you live, how you live there, are going to continue because of Mars being, along with the moon, in your 4th house. And of course the moon is in a square with Neptune in your sign. So your sensitivity is likely to be a little high at the present time. But if you can just inch up your contact with people in whichever way, even if it's online, that's a marvellous way to start being more sociable and embracing what Eros can bring to you. Now, it could be that you're already somebody who's very good at mixing and mingling, and if that's the case, someone in your group or connected to your group could show up in the next 8 weeks and really grab your imagination. If you're in a relationship and you're not sure whether this is really a sticker for the longer term, I do feel that this will create quite a lot of food for thought. It's been a great pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Please like, comment or subscribe, and goodbye.